Hello YouTube, this is Pastor Green. We're going to be doing another Creation Science seminar. Today's part 5A, the dangers of evolution theory. You can always email me at godsohman@gmail.com. This is going to be a YouTube creation seminar, so make sure you subscribe to my channel, click the bell, also like and comment. By subscribing and clicking the bell, you get updates whenever I post a new video, and by liking and commenting, it lets YouTube know whenever I'm getting a lot of interaction. So that way they'll promote my video more. So here's the big picture. You have God's plan. He wants to fill his creation with people. We're supposed to obey his laws and live in peace. And we're supposed to use his preaching of his word to win souls. Then, of course, you have Satan's plan. Satan wants to reduce the human population, and he wants you to disobey all God's laws and live in terror. And he wants to use the teachings of evolution to accomplish his goals. Now, I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's right around here on the map, so that way you guys know where I'm coming from. And there's going to be three different things happen in the future. We have the creation, which was the beginning of everything. God created the world in 6 literal days, rested on the seventh. And then we had the flood. Flood basically, God decided to punish his world and destroy it, and he started all over with Noah and his 3 kids and all their wives. And then we skip over here. There's going to be a coming judgment very soon. So we have the creation. That was right around 4000 BC. The flood, which was about 4,400 years ago, which is about 2000 BC. And then we have the coming judgment, which is going to be coming sometime in the future, where Christ come down. He's going to judge his people, take all of his Christians up to heaven, and then the people left here are going to go through about 3 years of wrath, and then there's going to be the time of great blessing. The yellow stripe on the bottom of the timeline is expanded very greatly to show the details in the top line. And I cover the 70th week of Daniel on my end time videos. And I'll try to put a link on top of the screen, that way you guys can see that if you guys are interested. This is the longevity chart from Adam to Joseph. You can actually see that how old the person was and when they had their first son. And if you add the names up, the dates up, you're actually going to get it that Earth was created about 6,000 years ago. So it all started with Adam. Adam was about 130 when Seth was born. Seth was 105 when Enos was born. Enos was 70 when Canaan was born. And it goes through, and Adam was right around 4000 BC. And Adam had dinosaurs living with him. Dinosaurs were just big lizards that lived with Adam and Eve. People got to see them. They didn't live millions and millions of years ago. They just were created about 6,000 years ago. And Billy Graham wrote in this little article in 2000. He said Noah's Ark apparently did not include dinosaurs. The reason is because dinosaurs and similar ancient creatures that we only know from fossils were extinct by the time of God's creation. What he didn't know about what science is actually showing, that dinosaurs are, they have soft tissue, which means they can't be millions of years old. And they all basically died during the time of Noah. So Billy Graham was wrong on this. You can actually see right here that Noah was about 600 years old when he went into the ark. You could actually get this chart from drdiner.com. It's $10. And in the back of it's going to have the verses that are talked about on there, the Daniel verses and also the Matthew verses, Matthew, Mark, and John. And you can get this for $10. They also have a bigger one. I believe it's $25. This right here is the time of Great Tribulation. The first part is the Great Falling Away. The temple gets rebuilt. There's a treaty that happens. And in the midst of it, you have the abomination of desolation, where the Antichrist breaks the treaty. Then you have 3.5 years of great tribulation. Great tribulation is also called the time of Jacob's trouble in the Bible. And again, I'll be linking the end time videos in this as well. And at the very end of this video, there's going to be a card that's going to basically say, you can click on this to the end time videos. And the Bible says many times that we shall have tribulation. Tribulation is spoken of at least 25 times in the Bible, 4 times in the Old Testament and 21 times in the New Testament. So the Bible is pretty clear that we're going to have tribulation. I've been studying this for about 10 years now, and I believe that we actually get taken up for the rapture at the end of the tribulation, after the end of the 7 years. Tribulation is not the same as God's wrath. Tribulation is what the earth does to us. Wrath is what God does to the world. So we're going to be here for the tribulation, but we Christians will not be here for the 3.5 years of the wrath. The wrath of God falls in the days of the Lord. The days of the Lord is 1,000-year reign. 3 years of that is going to be great trouble and wrath. Either 997 is going to be times of great blessings. And the day of Christ is the day that our race is over. They mentioned a bunch of times in the Bible the day of Christ. That's the day that Christ raptures us up, which is completely different than the day of the Lord. So the day of Christ is actually mentioned 7 times in the Bible. You can actually read the little verses right there. And again, you can look at my end time videos to see these different things. I'm actually going to start doing a video starting with after the rapture, covering what happens during the wrath and the time of great blessing. So the outline today is going to be three different things. What on the earth is happening, why is the evolution theory dangerous, and what are we going to do about it? The first thing is what on earth is happening. In Seminar Part 1, we talked about the Big Bang Theory and the age of the earth. In Seminar Part 2, we explained why it'll be 900 years old. Part 3, we explained about dinosaurs. In Part 4, we showed about different lies in the textbooks. In this section, we're going to focus on the last 150 years, and we're going to see the deadly effects of this evolution theory. Now we're going to first review some of what was discussed on video 4, and then discuss racism, communism, Nazism, and the coming New World Order. So it all started with James Hutton. He actually wrote in his book, The Theory of the Earth, that the Earth is much older than people thought. This started doubting people's truth in the Bible. When the Bible said, "Yea, God has said," he started making people doubt that. So there was a lot of revolutions. You had the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Spanish Revolution, the Polish, the Italian, and the German Revolution. And a lot of people didn't like revolutions. They were very anti-monarchy. And the Bible says you're supposed to honor your king. So people said, we don't want to honor our king, so maybe we shouldn't follow this whole Bible thing. This right here talks about before radiometric dating was possible, many people estimated the age of the Earth only be a few thousand years old. But in the 1700s, a Scottish scientist named James Hutton, he estimated that the Earth was much older. He used the principles of uniformitarianism, and this principle states that the Earth process occurring today are similar to those that have occurred in the past. He observed that the process changed the rocks and land around him very slowly, and he inferred that there had just been a slow throughout Earth's history. Hutton hypothesized that if it took much longer for a few thousand years to form the layers of rock around him, and to erode the mountains once they lowered kilometers high. John Playfield advanced Hutton's theories, but an English geologist, Charles Lyell, is given the credit for the most advancing uniformitarianism. And it's interesting that Charles Lyell started the idea of rock layers and the geologic column, but Charles Lyell was a lawyer. He wasn't a scientist. So Charles Lyell was a Scottish lawyer, and he wrote the book called In the Minds of Men. And he talked about in this book about the geologic column and the age of the Earth. But remember, people, he was just a lawyer. He was not a geologist. So he wrote this book called Principles of Geology in 1830. And in this book, he basically separated the different geologic columns in the Cretaceous, Jurassic, Permian, Carboniferous, Cambrian. And he basically took each area and gave it a date and an index fossil. And Sherwood Taylor says in the book Geology Changes the Outlook, I myself have little doubt that England it would have long. I myself have little doubt that in England it was long age uniformitarianism geology and the theory of evolution that changes from a Christian to a pagan nation. And Charles Darwin took Lyell's book on the HMS Beagle, and he read it through his 5 years voyage when he was on the Beagle. And Charles Darwin's philosophy was greatly influenced by Charles Lyell and Thomas Malthus, and he taught that more offsprings were produced more than can possibly survive with a limited food supply. They basically said that too many people are being born to have the food supply, so the best thing to do is just kill people, let all the weaker people die off. So what basically happened is Hutton's book came out in 1795, and it made people doubt that the Earth was 6,000 years old. Charles Lyell's book, The Principle of Geology, which was published in 1830, made people doubt the flood. And then Darwin's book, The Origin of Species, which was made in 1859, made people doubt the creator. And over the next 50 years of godless thinking, it led to humanism, racism, communism, Nazism, and now plans for a new world order. Sir Fred Hoyle said, "I'm haunted by a conviction that the nihilist philosophy, which so-called educated opinion, chose to adapt the following the publication of The Origin of Species, and committed mankind to a course of automatic self-destruction, a doomsday that was self-seeking." Charles Darwin said, "Often a cold shudder has run through me, and I've asked myself whether I have divided myself into a fantasy." So there's four great questions and two ways to answer them. Who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going when I die? So there's one viewpoint that says, incredible design. This must be a smart designer. So that's the creationist worldview. God is the God and judges all men. The Bible says in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. Then you have the evolution idea. This is amazing. A Big Bang made this from nothing. There's a humanist worldview. It says a man is God and answers to no one. Humanist Manifesto says that the humanists regard the universe as self-existing and not created. So why is evolution theory dangerous? Well, number one, it's a bad science based on a bunch of lies. This person said that evolution is not a theory, it's a fact. No person who pretends to any understanding of natural world can deny these facts. This is a mantra. This is not science. In a lot of the books, you'll say they have evidence from fossils, structure, molecular biology, and development. But all evidence used to support evolution has been proven wrong. We covered this on seminar number 4. And teachers need to really stop lying to yourself and your students. So the lies we covered so far is the Grand Canyon was not formed slowly. The geologic column does not exist. Rocks date to fossils, but the fossils date to rocks more accurately. That's not true. There's no index fossils. The layers of rocks are not different ages. They were made by the time of Noah. Plants and animals are not related. A change in species is not the real meaning of evolution. Natural selection does not cause evolution. The pepper mouse story never happened. Comparative anatomy does not prove a common ancestor. In fact, it proves a common designer. Humans never had gill slits. It's a human at conception. The appendix is not vestigial. The whale did not have a pelvis. The human tailbone is not vestigial. Dinosaurs did not live billions of years ago. Man did not evolve from animals or cavemen. The Big Bang is a big dud. The horse evolution is a lie. Life cannot evolve from non-living material. The law does not ban teaching creation science. Smaller does not equal simpler. Birds did not come from dinosaurs. The eye did not arise from slow changes. A bird did not hatch from a reptile egg. The trees of life in the books are pure imagination. DNA does not support evolution. Fossils do not provide any evidence for evolution. The universe is not billions of years old, and there's no evidence that says that it is. The Earth was never a hot molten mass. Pangea never existed. Animals and plants are designed are designed for not adapted to their environments. There are no simple living organisms. Life did not arise 3.5 billion years ago. The sun did not form before the Earth. Scientists have not made life in the lab. Snakes did not have vestigial legs. The Earth never had an oxygen-free atmosphere. In fact, it had more oxygen than it does now. No animal is related to any other kind of animal. DNA is a lot more than chemicals, and it carries information. Mutations do not improve species. Similar bone structures do not provide a common ancestor. Amino acids do not prove relationships. Humans are not related to chimps, and Darwin did not prove evolution. Also, textbooks do not teach kids to think critically, they teach them to be brainwashed. Arranging animals on paper does not prove a thing. Archaeopteryx is not part reptile. Feathers did not evolve from scales. It's not just the religious fundamentalists who disbelieve evolution. In fact, the majority of our population says that evolution doesn't exist. Evolution is not a light which eliminates all facts. There is no evidence for magnetic reversals. The Constitution does not discuss separation of church and state. The Supreme Court did not ban creation. So what's the history of teaching creation in public schools? So the 1800s to the 1925, Creation was taught right from the Bible in public schools. Some evolution was taught if the teachers wanted to, but it was not required. And this courthouse right here was where the famous Scopes monkey trial took place. And the Scopes monkey trial took place between a Christian lawyer and an evolutionist lawyer. In 1920 to 25, some states passed laws banning the teaching of evolution. In Scopes' trial in Dayton, Tennessee, the ACLU tried to get the law overturned but lost. And for the next 40 years, some states still had laws against teaching evolution. If the Scopes trial were retried in a modern university, this is an excellent novel, and it does just that. You'll be on the edge of your seat the entire time as you read this one. And it basically talks about if we was to do the exact same trial today, what exactly would happen. In 1968, the last law banning evolution was overturned. In 1980, Arkansas law banning equal time was overturned. Basically, what happened was they tried to say that you must be required if you're going to teach evolution to teach creation. And the Supreme Court says you can't force somebody to do something. It's up to them. And today, many teachers feel they cannot teach creation or the Bible in their classroom, and it's just not true. Louisiana passed a law requiring teachers to teach creation if they taught evolution, and the law was required balanced treatment. And it's never been against the law to teach creation. In fact, no statute exists in any state to bar instruction in creation science. It can be taught before, and it can be taught now. That's the famous atheist Stephen Jay Gould, who's since passed away. The Supreme Court ruling did not in any way outlaw the teaching of creation science in public schools. Quite simply, it's ruled that the form taken by the Louisiana law is unconstitutional to demand equal time for this particular subject. Creation science can be brought into science classrooms if you want. And the teachers and administration feel that it's appropriate. Numerous studies have shown that teachers and administrators favor just this route. And in fact, creation science is being taught in science courses throughout our country. The Supreme Court decision says only that the Louisiana law violates the constitutional separation of church and state, and it does not say that no one can teach creation science. And unfortunately, many individual teachers do. Some school districts even require equal time for creation and evolutionists. So Eugenia Scott's the one that just had that last quote, and she actually works for the National Science Education, and their goal is to keep evolution in public schools. So this person, William Provone, said, teachers and school boards in public schools are already free under the Constitution of the United States to teach about supernatural origins if they wish in their science classes. Laws can be passed in most countries of the world requiring discussion of supernatural origins in science classes, and it still satisfies the national legal requirements. And I've suggested for evolutionists, including discussion of your supernatural origins in your classes, and promote discussion of them in public and other schools. Come off your high horse, having only one evolution taught in some classes. See what happens if you teach evolution alongside with creation, and you show them side to side with no bias. The evolution theory is going to look really dumb next to creation, because there's absolutely no evidence for evolution, but there's ample evidence for creation. This person went on to say, the exclusivism you promote is painfully self-seeking and smacks of elitism. Why are you afraid of confronting the supernatural creation belief by the majority of persons in the United States and perhaps worldwide? Shouldn't students be encouraged to express their beliefs about origins in a class discussing origins by evolution? So basically what he's saying is you're saying that life was created from nothing, it's the origin of species, but they don't want to talk about origins. They want to say, well, it just happened, so you have to believe it. This person wrote, I'm a public school teacher. I went to a conference today. We were given a new student textbook to use in our conference. It's called The Sciences by Travell and Harrison, John Wiley and Sons. On page 611 it says, to what extent do you think that parents should have the right to decide what scientific theories and ideas are presented in schools? To what extent do you think parents ought to have the right to demand that opposing religious views be taught as well? Should the views of creationism, which are primarily based upon one type of Christianity, be given special consideration? It's getting more difficult to say the truth all the time. Thanks for giving your Christian science teacher some tools and resources. So basically what they're saying is, since we're teaching one religion of evolution, shouldn't we discuss all religions? And should we discuss one religion over the other one? And really, my response to that is we shouldn't teach religion in school at all, and that's including the religion of evolution. We should just stick to factual science and not get into some faith-based thing like evolution, Christianity, Buddhism, Muslimism. Just focus on the facts. This is actually an article in the Impact magazine talking about teachers can teach creation science in the classroom. Not only can you teach creation science in the public schools, you can teach it right out of the Bible. And you could teach or devote a whole class to religion and have the textbook be your Bible. We all know the effects of what happened in 1963 when the Bible was taken out and evolution was put into schools, but we have been deceived by the ACLU. In 1963, the Supreme Court banned the use of the Bible to try to get kids saved, which is not good, obviously, but it's a lot better than what the ACLU had led us to believe. So basically what they said is you can teach creation in school, you can teach right out of the Bible, but you're not allowed to try to get kids saved. And what some teachers will do is they'll actually teach the Bible in school, and they'll tell their students, I'm not allowed to get you saved in school, but if you want to get saved, come see me after class and outside the parking lot or something. This person said they did not throw out the Bible. We have thrown the Bible out because we have allowed ourselves to be deceived by the ACLU. This is the best statement I've ever heard on humanists. The humanist motivation was a comment regarding the American Civil Liberties Union successful lawsuit to get a Christian manager seen off a courthouse lawn. Their critics said this: the ACO is just jealous that they don't have what the scene depicts, 3 wise men and a virgin. Start your bubble. You can actually read this book here by Dwayne Gish. It's called Teaching Creation Science in Public Schools. And you can actually start a Bible course in your public school. It's completely legal. This book will tell you how to do that. States can legally require teachers to discuss evolution in science classes, but they cannot require them to discuss creation. Teachers may discuss creation in science classes if they wish, but they're not required. But for whatever reason, they are required to teach evolution. Courts allow states to require discussion of scientific weaknesses in evolution theory, but not requiring discussing evidence for creation. So you're forced to teach evolution in schools, it seems like nowadays, but you're also allowed to teach why that's a really dumb theory. But you can't require people to teach creation. In the landmark ruling of School District of Edmonton Township versus Skinham, the court held that it certainly may be said that the Bible is worthy of study for its literary and historical qualities. Nothing we have said here indicates that such study of the Bible or of religion, when presented objectively as part of a secular program of education, may be affected consistently with the First Amendment. So what they're saying is there's a lot of really good information in the Bible. There's history, there's poetry, there's just different literary things, and it's a really good book. You can actually teach even science out of the Bible. There's a lot of science in the Bible as well. The Supreme Court stated that the Bible may be constitutionally used in appropriate studies of history, civilization, ethics, comparative religions, or the like. Permitting public school observances, which include religious elements, promoted the secular purpose of advancing the students' knowledge and appreciation of that role in our religious heritage, and its played in the social, cultural, and historical development of the civilization. Teachers already possess the flexibility to present a variety of scientific theories about the origins of humankind. We are free to teach any and all facts of this subject. Teaching a variety of scientific theories about the origin of mankind to school children might be done with the clear secular intent of enhancing the effectiveness of scientific instruction. Discussions of any scientific fact, hypothesis, or theory relative to the origin of the universe, the earth, and the life, the how, are appropriate to the school curriculum. For all the latest of what is happening in education, you can also get the video Crisis in the Classroom. It costs $25. It's for every public school teacher in your area. Just contact this person right here. What about the separation of church and state? Can creation or the Bible be discussed in public schools? And there's no such phrase mentioned in the Constitution. Thomas Jefferson used it in a letter to the Dansbury Baptists in Dansbury, Connecticut in 1802. He said the First Amendment was erected a wall of separation between the church and state. It is a one-dimensional wall. It keeps the government from running the church, but it makes sure that the Christian principles will always stay in the government. And this right here is an impact article about the biological textbook review development and the creation evolution controversy. And this is a rating of the 1991 textbooks and the percent of evolution they taught. And as you can see, they started off being really, really small, 2.9%, and over time they've got larger and larger. And this, there's a company that actually will rate every single textbook on the amount of evolution they teach. And they're showing like this Glencoe Biology is does a pretty good job of teaching evolution, or this Prentice Hall Biology does a very horrible job of teaching evolution. And the worst is Holt Biology. So there's 4 big publishers. There's the Scott Foreman, which is Prentice Hall. It's owned by Parson Learning. It's one of the largest publishers. Then you have Merrill McGraw-Hill, which is the second largest. You have Harcourt. It's no longer HBJ. It's owned by Holt Reinhardt. Then you have Heap, brought by McDonald. It's actually owned by McDonald. This is an excellent book about evolution. It's called The Icons of Evolution. I probably mention this in every single one of my videos. It's a really great book to have. And this is a book right here by the Gablers. It's called What Are They Teaching Our Children? And the Gablers are actually really great. They go around and they read all the different textbooks, and they basically help you in your textbook selection process. You can contact them. There's their phone number on there. You can get this book for $5 from drdino.com. And this person right here wrote to my friend Dr. Hoven. They said, thank you for using What Are They Teaching Our Children? You'll be interested to know that our 39 years of work, we have never seen publishers so sensitive or schools so receptive to our textbook reviews and rankings. We're also pleased to recommend the Harcourt and Scott Foreman Elementary Science series. They are much less dogmatic on evolution than the others we've reviewed. And if you go to textbookraviews.com, the Gablers will actually tell you the list of textbooks that are good to have. And they do it for free, but I recommend giving them a donation because they have a lot of hard work. And you can actually write these different people here about textbook selections. Adolf Hitler said, "Let me control the textbooks and I'll control the state." So the question is, who picks the textbooks? So this is the way the textbooks are selected. The state legislature adopts educational standards. And this is really where the atheists work the hardest. So the state legislature will adopt educational standards. The publisher creates a bunch of books to try to meet the standards. 22 states have state textbook selections committees. They'll select about 5 books. Sometimes they'll select 3 or 4. Sometimes they'll select 10 or 15. But they pick a variety of different books. And then a city or district will appoint a committee to select 1 or 2 books on the approved list. And then the schools will basically pick which one of those 2 books they want to use, and they're ordered and ready for September. So what can you do to help the problem in your area? So this is a map showing the teachings of evolution. All the red states do a horrible job of teaching evolution, where the green states do a fantastic job of teaching evolution. So you can get creation materials in your public schools. You can contact Bert Wagner, and he'll show you how to do that. So this is a letter. It says the creation video series was brought to a local high school. And when I went out to check out the video that I'm talking about right now, number 5, I found out that somebody had hidden the box of seminars and debates unopened and underneath a desk in the back wall. I was told by the librarian that she was told not to put them out for the students to find. This person's 18-year-old daughter witnessed this. We were very upset, and I told her it was proof that the enemy is trying to avoid and hide the truth. My daughter has since graduated, and I don't know if these tapes are still available to students or not. So here's the steps to fix the problem. First, you have to understand the problem. Then you have to get your kids out as possible. The problem is not fixable in the short term. You can get a private school or homeschooled, but don't put them on a bus marked going to New York if you're trying to send them to LA. If you let your kids stay in public school, don't send them off unarmed. Genesis 14:14, Abraham's 318 servants were born in his own house. You have to drill creation into their heads. Have them watch my videos. There's other people that talk about the same exact thing. But make sure they know the Bible. Insulate them within the system. Make sure they're exempt from classes. So what you want to basically do is you want to write a letter to your school and say, my son Herman is not allowed to hear about evolution theory, genetic discussions, different things that you don't want your child to learn about. And by law, the school has to keep them out of those subjects. You also need to train them how to deal with hostile teachers and homework questions. You need to equip them to win over their teachers, their classmates, and their friends. You need to make them become political activists by influencing legislation, school board, and teachers. And if you have your child run for president, vice president, treasurer, become on the school board, then they can actually decide what's best for the school. So basically, these are 4 things you can do to fix public school textbooks. You can demand the schools cut out pages with false information. You can have them glue the pages together, or you can have them post a warning sticker on the front cover. And also give students my brainwash booklet or equivalent. There's a bunch of different brainwash booklets out there that you can actually give to people that'll teach them the truth about all these evolutionary lies. This is the book I'm talking about right here. It's called All You Being Brainwashed. You can get it from drdowner.com. This is actually Atlanta School Journal Constitution. They have this book here, this biology booklet, and they found there's a bunch of lies about evolution in there. So they put that little sticker on the bottom. It says this textbook contains material on evolution. Evolution is a theory. It is not fact regarding the origin of living things. This material should be approached with an open mind, studied carefully, and critically considered. You can see on the bottom, they put this in the front on every single textbook that has to do with biology. And actually, that was the Atlantic Journal Constitution. So Florida has a statute over the accuracy of instructional material. It says, basically, the commissioner may remove material from the list of state-adopted material if he or she finds the content to be in error. Texas has an administrative code. It says the book shall be factual, and theory shall be clearly distinguished from facts. Wisconsin has a code. It says that all their textbooks should be factually accurate. Atlanta has a code. It says they should be adequate and current. Alabama has a message from the state board. It says this textbook contains evolution, a controversial theory some scientists present as scientific explanation for the origin of living things. It says no one was present when life first appeared on Earth. Therefore, any statements about life's origin should be considered as theory and not fact. Microevolution, which can be described as fact, macroevolution has never been deserved and should be called a theory. So this right here says that microevolution, which is basically speciation, is allowed because we actually can see that. But macroevolution, changing from one kind to another kind, is a theory. California textbooks say they should be factory accurate and they should contain current and confirmed research. Publishers will print your books just for your state standards. If you actually contact different companies, they'll actually say, okay, what exactly do you want? And they'll make a book specifically for your state. This right here is a new California Science Standards. And this is an idea of what kids will learn. It's in a textbook evaluation. They actually have all the books out there saying, these are the books that our state is allowing. And they basically let the parents decide which one of these books is best for their kids. In this book right here, Students' Legal Rights, page 53 tells the students the right to be exempt from classes or material that's contrary to their religion. So if you write a letter to your school principal and teachers and say, I don't want my kid Herman to learn about evolution, genetics, I don't want him to learn about sexual development, I don't want him to learn about any of these things that I find to be wrong. And if they actually teach your kid these things and you've already told them you don't want them to, they can be held liable for that. But you got to put a certified letter. You have to have proof that you sent it. And if you get this book right here, it'll tell you all your legal rights. Not knowing your rights can be as bad as not having any rights at all. Here's some pitfalls to watch for. If you're going to have a good program, like if you have me come to your school and speak, or some other person that's giving a good message, some left-wing liberal staff member will make sure it's an opt-in program. And what that means is that the kid's going to come home with a note and you have to actually sign this note in order for your kid to see the speaker. Because they know a lot of kids are going to forget to get the note signed. So they won't be allowed to go see this good program unless you sign for it. But if it's a bad program, like a gay or lesbian speaker, we'll try to make sure it's an opt-out program, which means that you have to sign saying your kid's not allowed to see this. And they know that kids are going to forget to get these things signed, so the kid's forced to go see this program. Here's some practical steps to convert teachers. Do not confront them publicly if at all possible. Talk to them privately after class. If you're late, if you're a troublemaker, if you don't do your homework, and you don't pay attention to class, do not tell them you're a Christian. You want to be the best student you possibly can, and then you got to talk to your teacher and say, I don't really like the way you teach these things. These are practical steps to handle evolution in class. If a test question comes up about evolution, you need to tell them the textbook says this. However, it's not correct. The idea of the class is to learn the material, but you're not forced to swallow it. And make sure you ask to be exempt from a class that are teaching things contrary to your religion. And make sure you check out that book on students' legal rights. And you can always contact Joe Baker, and here's his email address for help in your school. The practical steps to help teachers. You can give a video to watch at home. You can actually have me come to there and talk to them. Make sure you pray for your teachers. Invite them to a creation seminar. Have them email me with any questions. And ask them to invite a creation speaker to their class or show a video in class to give equal time to other views or origins. In most cases, I'm willing to come to the school and debate against the teacher, so that way the kids can see the teacher and me having a debate. And we're going to discuss different things like origin and evolution, and we're going to see who's really right. I've done a couple different debates, and I have not lost a single one yet. But at the very least, they let students know there's two different sides of the story. You have the evolution side and the creation side. And usually when they sit side by side, the evolution theory looks really dumb. Here's some practical steps to change your school. Run for influence on your school board. Get in on your influence curriculum committee. And write textbook publishers. If you're somewhere in legislation, make sure you pass or enforce laws requiring textbooks to be accurate. And make sure you raise awareness for everyone you know about problems and the solutions. I live in Butler County in Ohio right now, and I call the Board of Education all the time, and I talk to their board where they basically discuss textbooks. And if every single church in my area, there's about 20 churches just in a 10-mile area, if they would call and complain, eventually the schools have to take note of that. Proverbs 29:25 says, "The fear of man bringeth a snare, but those who putteth in his trust in the Lord shall be saved." Here's some more practical steps for changing your school. Try to convert teachers and students. If you have a teacher that believes in creation and not evolution, they're going to stop teaching evolution. If this teacher's whole class is Christians who does not believe evolution, they're going to have a really hard time teaching it. And write letters to the editor when they have articles on evolution. So if you get your local paper and they write this dumb evolutionary idea, write letters to the editor and say this is wrong. This is what the Bible says. Also donate creation books and videos to your school library. Bert Wagner is a really good person to get a hold of to help you get those in your library. And here's the phone number. Also educate others. Use creation for an evangelism as in Acts 17. And this is a tactics to use to keep creation out of public schools. What will happen is if the teacher starts teaching about creation, the ACLU will threaten the teacher, saying we're going to sue them. They're going to try to claim teachers can only teach what's on the state-approved curriculum. Teachers can teach whatever they want. You can teach a curriculum, any curriculum you want. It's just what happens is the school board's not going to pay for it. But if you're willing to pay for it, or if the kids are willing to pay for it, you can teach any curriculum you want. They claim teachers cannot correct curriculum. That's not true. If you've got a math book that says 2 + 2 = 5, you don't think a teacher is going to correct that? Of course, teachers are going to correct that. It's mistakes in the curriculum. They try to mislead people into thinking that evolution is a secret part of science, and it's not to be questioned. So they want you to keep your kids to believe these lies. That way, they're easier to manipulate later. And they use peer pressure to ridicule or silence those who oppose lies in textbooks. The ACLU has threatened to sue many teachers, and by doing that, a lot of times a principal will tell the teacher, "Hey, stop teaching this, because if you teach it, we're going to get in trouble." But the ACLU has went to court multiple times, and they've lost every single time when it comes to teaching. When they say you can't teach creation in schools, they've lost every time. And be prepared for opposition from the enemy. Satan protects his evolution theory with a vengeance. This guy right here, Roger Dehart, he was a science teacher, and he believed in evolution. And what he did was he'd go to a school and he'd inform students of the errors in the textbooks, and he'd pass out articles from current science journals. He would say, "Now I know it says on page 47 this, but they just found some new scientific theory that actually says it's this instead." And he actually got in trouble for teaching these kids that the textbooks were wrong. And this right here is Kevin Haley. He actually lost his job for exposing the errors in the textbooks. Baylor University in Waco, Texas, fired Dubinsky in April 2000 because he advocated intelligent design. Forrest Mines was a science writer for 20 years. He published for National Geographic, Science Digest, and the American Journal for Physics, and 60 different magazines and newspapers. He was denied a job as a writer for Scientific America because he became a creationist. This right here is a teacher-cotton evolution debate. The biology teacher was reassigned for doubting Darwin's theory. This right here says the educator quits over reprimand for teaching evolution alternative. Dan Clark was told by Lafayette's Indiana schools not to introduce creationism into his classrooms. And the citizens in this area helped him find a new job. This right here is an article called Standing Firm. This is teachers who question evolution quit his job rather than accept a reprimand. This right here says the educator quit over reprimand for teaching evolution alternative. Dean Ketton, he co-authored this book, Pandas and People, and he actually wrote books about evolution. But in 1993, he was removed from his teaching position because he raised doubts about evolution. So now he wrote this book called Pandas and People, and it's a great book about biological origins. It doesn't talk about evolution. Here's some things you can do if you're a teacher. You can demand that schools cut out pages with false information on it, or if school policy allows you to correct mistakes in your books, just do it yourself. Remind classes of great scientists in the past who believed in God and the Bible. And note every occasion where an evolutionary and old Earth paradigm is explicitly mentioned or implied by a textbook, and encourage students to question whether the statement is really scientific or religious. You can also discuss topics not readily explained by current orthodox science, like, for instance, the presence of information in DNA, the lack of cellular neutrons, rapid decay of geomagnetic fields, the recessional velocity of the moon, and the lack of intermediate fossils. And invite people like me and other creationists to discuss real science in classes. You can also do things that point out that this rock that's unearthed never came with a clear age label. And the dating process that they use for aging these different fossils are speculative, and there's frequently contradictions in there, and altogether they are incomparable with great ages. Point out the effects such as lunar craters, certain pathological virus infections, and various instances where nature now appears red or in tooth or claw. For example, a fallen world, not an evolved world. Also, evolution teaches bad fruit. Then Matthew 17 and 18 says, "Even so every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit." I really like this picture right here. It shows a guy swinging an axe that says creation science message. And on this tree, you have the root cause, which is evolution. And off of evolution, you have humanism, abortion, uniformitarianism, racism, Nazism, communism, drug culture, pornography, sexual perversion. And a lot of people will attack that branch. We got to get rid of Nazism, so they attack Nazism. We got to get rid of racism. Let's attack racism. But if you attach the tree at the bottom where it's evolution, all the other things are going to fall as well. And that's really what this is about. It's about showing you the dangers of evolution. Like, for instance, humanism. So this is an article. This was on Larry King Live on CNN. They actually interviewed Jeffrey Dahmer. It says Jeffrey Dahmer. It says he at first was extremely hard, but then he was sent away with 13 books for the Institute of Creation Research (ICR). I told him about the place, and he bought 13 books. It turned him from his evolutionary into a creationist, and from there to a Christian. And he started handing out and talking, handing out pamphlets and so forth to other prisoners. And Larry King says, so he was born again. Dahmer said, he was basically talking to the stepmother of Jeffrey Dahmer. The stepmother said, he was. I'm sure I was talking with him. It wasn't just jailhouse conversion. I really believe that. Larry King said, because he wasn't going to get out. And the stepmother said, no. Even the psychiatrist that examined him for the purpose of the trial didn't know why he did it. But he did tell me that he felt he could do what he did. He felt free to do what he did. He told me that it was after reading the books on, these scientists on creation science. He felt that he was up from the slime, as he put it. Molecules to amoebas, that Larry type of thing, evolution. There was nothing, no direction from a God, no one to be accountable to, no one to answer to at all. Larry King said, is that what he believed? The stepmother said, it's what he felt. It's why he felt he could do whatever he wanted to. It was quite different from knowing the cause. She's basically saying Jeffrey Dahmer did what he did because he didn't know that it was wrong. He thought he could just do whatever he wanted because he was an animal. He read these books on creation and found out there was a creator. It's also the foundation for humanism. Romans 1:28 says, and even though they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do the things that were not convenient. This is an article. This is a book called "What Can We Believe?" This says, do humanists believe in a supreme being? Emphatically, yes. That supreme being is man. Humanists have no knowledge of anything more supreme. The turning point in history will be the moment man becomes aware that the only God is man himself. Hitler says, "I am God. I am God. I am God. I am God. I'm God." God's up in heaven, and he's saying, "Hey, Graber, come listen to this." Ha ha ha. I would not accept that creation physiologically because I don't want to believe in God. Therefore, I choose to believe what is scientifically impossible: spontaneous generation rather than evolution. This was a Nobel Prize winner. He said that the only reason why he believes in evolution is because he doesn't think it's possible to believe in God. That's why he believes something that he knows is a lie. We no longer feel ourselves to be a guest in someone else's home and therefore obliged to make our behavior conform to a set of pre-existing comic rules. It's our creation now. We make the rules. We establish the parameters of reality. We create the world. And because we do, we no longer feel beholden to outside forces. We no longer have to justify our behavior. For we are now the architects of the universe. We are responsible to nothing outside of ourselves. We are the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. That was his book, guy Jeremy Rifkin. We take the side of science in spite of the patient's absurdity of some of his constructs, in spite of its failure to fulfill many of its extravagant purposes of health and life, in spite of tolerances of the scientific community for unsubjugated, not-so stories, because we have prior commitment to a commitment to materialism. Moreover, that materialism is absolute, for we cannot allow a divine foot in the door. This was a book by Richard Lewontin. Genesis 3 says, basically in Genesis 3, Satan put into the minds of his followers that they should build a kingdom and rule the world. He secretly plans to rule them to destroy mankind and kill the seed of the woman, because in Genesis 3, he says that God said the seed of the woman is going to kill the snake. And so Satan doesn't want that, so he's trying to do everything he can to basically destroy man. If evolution is true, who owns the world? Who makes the rules? And how do we decide what's right and wrong? If man is God, and this is what humanism means, then the strongest make the rules. The mighty makes right. There's no absolute standards from right or wrong. So you have these people that basically believe that there's no God, so they can do whatever they want. During the Civil War, one man decided he didn't want to get involved, so he put on a Yankee coat and rebel pants. After the battle, he was found dead. His Yankee coat was full of rubber bullets, and his rebel pants was full of Yankee bullet holes. You got to pick a side. The problem is very simple. We're in the center of a battlefield, and the greatest war in history. The battle is between God and Satan. You simply need to decide whose side you wish to be on. You cannot be neutral. And then all you can do is try to help your general win. Christians have the incredible advantage of having the infallible book and the outcome already spelled out. I've read the last chapter. The Christians win. Let's trace a little of the history of what's this war, better understand what we should be doing for a general, and reveal any fears you may have about the future. God created the world. He owns it, and He makes the rules. Psalms 24:1 says, "The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell within." The problem started about 6,000 years ago when Lucifer decided he should be God. So on this Christian timeline, about 6,000 years ago, God created the world. Sometime within the first 100 years or so, Lucifer, who's called Satan, he rebelled against God and decided to destroy God's creation. And this is the subject of this session. The big picture. It appears that Satan wants to do three things. He wants to make mankind wicked so God would have to destroy them. He wants to convince some men to destroy other men. And he wants to keep as many as possible from hearing the gospel. And Satan has used many methods throughout the years. For example, he wants to try to make men think he's God and he makes the rules. And Satan knew this would lead to genocide. Ezekiel 28:15 says, "Thou Lucifer was perfect in thy ways from the days when thou wast created, until iniquity was found in thee. Thy heart was filled up because of thy beauty, and they have corrupted thy wisdom by reason out of thy brightness. And I will cast thee to the ground, and I will lay thee before kings, and they may behold thee." Isaiah 14:12. "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars. I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the north sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. They see thee shall narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble and to shake the kingdom?" One day we're all going to see what Satan looks like, and we're going to think to ourselves, this is the guy? This is the guy I was worried about? It's kind of like in Wizard of Oz. Remember Wizard of Oz, how you had this great and powerful Oz, and then Toto moved the little thing out of the way, and he saw the little guy behind there? Isaiah 14:17. "They made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities, and he opened not the house to prisoners." See, Wizard of Oz is really interesting. You have this great and powerful big old head in the sky, and he says, what you're going to do? And he found out it was just some little guy behind the little curtain. While Satan and his followers are making their plans to rule the world, God's in heaven laughing. Psalms 2:1-2 says, "Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointing, saying, Let us break their bands asunder. Let us cast away their cords from us." It says, "He sitteth in the heavens and laughs. The Lord shall have them in dispersion." Basically, it's saying that all these people on the earth are trying to make all these little pinky in the brain ideas, how they're going to rule the world. And God's just up in heaven laughing about it. Satan started about tricking Eve in the garden. Genesis 3:1. It says, "And the serpent said unto the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. For God does know that the day you eat thereof, your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. See, Satan's plan to rule the world has always been the same. Make man doubt God's word. Like saying, yea, hath God said. Deny God's word and thy authority. You're not going to die. And offer the kingdom and knowledge. Defy man. Ye shall be as gods. See, Satan's trying to do the same thing on Jesus. He's told him, all the kingdoms I'll give to you. And God said, get behind me, Satan. This is again, the devil taketh him unto the exceedingly high mountain, and showeth him the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them. And he said unto him, all these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. And then saith Jesus unto him, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him shall only serve him. Satan has a Satanistic high priest, Alexander Crow. He claimed that he was a demon. And he told him 2,000 years would mark the end of the superstition of Christianity and the beginning of the Golden Age, with no possession he would dominate and conquer, and would ascend to godhood. Satan wants you to believe that you can evolve into a god. If you believe, see, what you believe determines your philosophy of life, it determines how you're going to behave. And many people have attempted to act like gods and rule the world. Colossians 2:8 says, beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and that vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. Philosophy, philo means love, and Sophie means man's wisdom. So philosophy is the love of man's wisdom. Evolution is a philosophy. It's not a science. It lets man think that he can remove God and put himself in God's place. Why is creation important in the means of evolution? It starts with the Bible and the creation of the world. Scoffers are ignorant of the creation. I see the evidence in ministries that are using this approach. There's two great sermons in the book of Acts. Peter quoted many scriptures. In Acts 2, Peter quoted many scriptures. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, the heaven and the earth. In Exodus it says, in 6 days the Lord made heaven, the earth, the sea, and all that in them is. And in 2 Peter 3 it says, knowing this first, thou shalt come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lusts, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. For this they are willingly ignorant, that by the word of heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water in the water. So the first ignorant of the creation, whereby the world that once was, being overflowed with water, perished. They're ignorant of the flood. And this is actually what I was talking about Paul. Acts 17:16 says, now while Paul waited for them in Athens, his spirit was stirred in him, when he saw the city wholly given to the idolatry. And therefore he disputed he in the synagogue with the Jews, and with the devout persons in the markets daily with them, and met with them. Then certain philosophers of the people and these different people encountered him, and they said, what will this babbler say? And others, he seemeth to be a setter foot in strange gods, because he preached to them of Jesus and the resurrection. And they took him and brought him into Areopagus, saying, may we know that this new doctrine wherefore you speak of? For thou bringest certain strange things into our ears. We would know therefore what these things mean. For all the Athenians and strangers which were there spent their time in nothing else, but neither to tell or hear the new thing. And then in Acts 17 it says, and Paul stood in the midst of Mars Hill, and he said, ye men of Athens, I perceive thee that all things ye are too superstitious. For as I passed by and beheld your devotions, I found an altar to the inscription to the unknown God, whom therefore these ignorant worship, and him I declare to you. God who made the world, and all things therein, seeing that he is the Lord of heaven and the earth, dwelleth not in the temples made of hands. Neither is worship with men's hands, as he thought needed anything, seeing he giveth to life and breathing all these things. See, basically Paul had two messages. The first one was to the Jews, and he talked about Scripture. And the second one was the heathens, and he talked about the creation. See, Paul's new way to reach those ignorant of the Lord to teach them about the creation. And Paul noticed that they were interested, and he started his conversation from there. This is a great book called Seven Men Who Ruled the World from the Grave. These philosophers actually changed the world. It's these different people that had these crazy philosophies that we still believe today. Getting Eve to believe that she could be a god was the beginning of a strategy Satan would use throughout all of history. Scores of people have made attempts to conquer and rule the world. Satan causes so many to be wicked that God destroyed the world with a flood. God always has his faithful few that disrupt Satan's plans. God created the world. Satan became proud of his beauty and decided man should worship him. And Satan's rebellion failed, and he was cursed. God said that the seed of the woman would bruise his head. Genesis 3:14. And the Lord God said unto the serpent, Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed upon all cattle, and upon every beast of the field, and upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. So basically, God's saying, this woman's going to step on your head and bruise your head, and you're going to basically bruise the heel. Now, a bruise of the head is basically fatal, but a bruise of the heel, it might hurt, but it's going to eventually heal. Matthew 2:16, it said, Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, he was exceedingly wroth and sent forth, and he slew all the children that were in Bethlehem. So he didn't just say, find Jesus and kill him. He killed all the children. Satan has tried to destroy every seed of the woman to save his own skin. He knew God could not tolerate sin, so he has worked hard to make man sin so God would have to destroy his own creation. See, Satan wants everybody to sin so that way God doesn't want them. And that's why we have to have Christians going out there and teaching people the truth. Genesis 6:5. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great upon the earth, and that every imagination of the thought was in his heart, and only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him in his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man from which I have created, from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repented me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. After the flood, Satan got right back to work corrupting people and attempting to create his New World Order. These are different attempts at the New World Order. Nimrod of the Tower of Babel, the Babylonian Nebuchadnezzar, the Roman Empire, Roman Catholic Church, Hitler's Third Reich. Daniel 1-2 says, In the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar dreamt dreams, wherefore his spirit was troubled, and his sleep broke from him. And the king commanded and called the magicians and the astronomers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dreams. So they came across and stood before the king. And the king said unto them, I dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. And he spake to the Chaldeans, the king of the Syriac, O king, live forever. Tell thy servant thy dream, we will show you the interpretation. And the king answered and said unto the Chaldeans, The thing is gone from me. If ye will not make known the dream within the interpretation hereof, you shall be cut into pieces, for your house shall be made a dunghill. So he's saying, I don't remember what my dream was. I forgot my dream. So if you can't tell me what my dream was and what it means, I'm going to kill you. And then Daniel showed up. And he said, Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was trouble. The image's head was of fine gold, and the breastplate of silver, his belly and thighs of brass, the legs of iron, and his feet part iron and part clay. That was Saul, that till a stone was cut from the hands, which smote the image of thy feet, where the iron and clay, and broke them into pieces. So he basically had this dream: a head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass, legs of iron, and feet of iron and clay. It says, Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the shaft of the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away. There no place was found for them, and the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. This dream, we will tell the interpretation thereof based upon the king. Thou, O king, thou art the head of kings. Therefore thou as the heaven hast given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And whatsoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the heaven, has given unto thine hand, and has made thee the ruler of all of them. Thou art the head of gold. And after thee shall another kingdom arise, inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule of the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, insomuch the iron breaketh into pieces and subdue all things, and as iron that breaketh all things shall break into pieces and bruise. And wherefore thou sawest the feet of toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in the strength of the iron, forasmuch as thou sawest the iron mixed with the miry clay. And as for the toes and feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And wherefore thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay, thou shalt mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of thou king shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom, which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall all break into pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So basically what Daniel's saying is, each one of these body parts is going to be a new kingdom, but there's going to be one kingdom greater than all these, the kingdom of God. Daniel 2:45. It says, for inasmuch as thou sawest the stone was cut out from the mountain from without hands, and that it broke into pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known the king, and it shall come to pass hereafter. The dream is certain, and the interpretation therefore sure. So basically, my interpretation is that this image that he saw was actually historical kingdoms that one day fall apart, but it's also a kingdom to come in the end times. And this rock that's not cut by human hands is Jesus, Petra, the big stone. He's going to come through and destroy all these kingdoms, and then his kingdom is going to rule forever as a great mountain. Dr. Moore has a great book tracing the history of evolutionary thought and its devastating effects for the last 6,000 years. And remember, we got to cut it. We got to cut it to evolution. We have to get rid of all these other things by cutting down evolution. Let's talk about racism. For some reason, if there's no God, and if man evolved from the dark-skinned apes, then the colored man must be less evolved than the others. That's what some people believe. Since the African Americans have darker colored skin, they must be less evolved because we obviously came from apes. Evolution is the foundation of racism. Notice the title of Darwin's book. His book came out in 1959. The Theory of Evolution. It came long before that. This book only attempted to justify the racism already being practiced. See, the book's called The Origin of Species, but that's not what the book's really called. See, in his book, he said, look at all these animals. They have all these similarities. He says they may be classed for different species, but they're the same kind of animal. He said they all look different, so they must have evolved from some kind of ancestor. And this book says, the book titled The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. Again, they didn't give the whole title of the book. The whole title of the book is The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or The Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. You see that? Favored races? See, back in the time of Darwin, everybody was racist. So it was okay to basically be a racist. Could you imagine if a professor came forth and said, I believe there's favored races? He'd be fired on the spot. See, Darwin just thought the natives were just advanced animals. He said, in some future period, not so very distant, measured by centuries, the civilized race of man will certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. He said, and thus from the war of nature and famine and death, the most exalted object which we are capable of conceiving, namely, the production of higher animals, follows. You see, if evolution is true, any kind of inferior species has to be destroyed for the strong ones to continue. And that's where all these basically racism comes from. They believe that they are the greatest. And because they're the greatest, they've got to get rid of the people that aren't the greatest. Back in 1859, they had Negroes for sale. They actually had auctions where they would auction off these people because they felt that Negroes were not they were not the elite race. They thought they were inferior. This right here says the standard of intelligence of the average adult Negro is similar to that of the 11-year-old youth of the Homo sapien. They're basically saying that, because you didn't evolve far enough, you're not smart enough. Biological arguments for racism have been common before 1850, but they increased by order of multitude following the acceptance of evolutionary theory. So, there was different things saying, well, maybe that, this person or that person is less evolved than me. But once evolutionary theory was popular, everybody started saying that it must be true. No rational man of the facts believes that the average Negro is equal or less superior of the white man. That's Thomas Huxley, is Darwin's bulldog. The black people of Australia exact the same race as the African Negro, and they cannot take the gospel. All attempts to bring them to knowledge of the true God has yet utterly failed. Poor brutes in human shape, they must perish by the face of the earth, by less brute beasts. That's basically Charles Kingsley. He actually believed that you couldn't give the gospel to the black people because they just weren't smart enough. The Mormon doctrine says Negroes in this life are denied the priesthood. Negroes are not equal to other races. It's the Lord's doing. The lack of spiritual valiance in those concerned on the first estate. So the Mormons for years believed that basically black people were evil and they couldn't receive the gospel. They went around further saying that it's the divine decree. Cain, Ham, and the whole Negro race have been cursed with black skin and the mark of Cain. They believed that the mark of Cain was dark skin, which is obviously not true, but that's what the Mormons believe. This person here, Mark Peterson, said, "If there is one drop of Negro blood in my children, I have read to you they've received the curse." Brigham Young's Mormon president said, "Should I tell you the law of God regarding the African race? If the white man who belongs to the chosen seed mixes his blood with the seed of the Cain, the penalty of the law of God is death on the spot, and that will always be so." So the Mormons, again, they believe that Negroes are not actually real people. There's actually a great book called Mormonism: The Way That Seemeth Right, and The Secret History of the Eyewitness Account of the Rise of Mormonism. They're great books if you're Mormons and you don't you want the truth, or if you have Mormon friends, they're good books to get for them. The HMS Brooke was allowed by law to carry 454 slaves, and this diagram shows how she carried the 451 slaves. One voyage she carried 609 slaves before the law was passed, and you can see how they have them organized right here on the boat. And usually about 20% of people died on the trip. This is an example of a loose pack design to maximize profits by minimizing slave loss. And there was all these different laws saying that black people could be sold because they thought they were property, they thought they were inferior. And some leaders taught that the Aborigines were not as evolved as the white man. They cited the fact that Aborigines have bigger jawbones and their evidence of evolutionary theory. But the truth is that the Aborigines use their mouth as a vice. They put stuff in there and they bite and they twist. And we know that if you use your muscles more and your bones more, they become bigger. Some leaders taught that the Aborigines were not evolved because they had the bigger jawbones. And you can see right here the different jawbones here. The larger bony buildup on the inside of the Eskimo's jaw responds to heavy chewing. They have to chew a lot harder items, so they actually have bigger jawbones. This right here is Ernst Haeckel. He's one of those crazy evolutionists that came up with that humans have gill slits. It says the mental life of savages arises a little above that of higher mammals, especially that with apes, which they are genealogically connected. Their intelligence moves within narrowest bounds and can no more or less speak of their reasoning that the more intelligent animals. These lower races, talking about the Aborigines and the Eskimos and stuff like that, are psychologically nearer to the mammals, apes, or dogs than the civilized Europeans. We must therefore assign a totally different value to their lives. So Ernst Haeckel is saying that because they believe that they're evolved, they have less value for their lives. This right here says in the beginning of the white settlement, there was an estimated 300,000 Aborigines settled all over Australia. Aborigines were viewed as the settlers as primitive, savage, and unchanging. In addition to warfare killings, water, flour, and sugar were poisoned and diseases were introduced. They thought it was okay because they thought they were lesser species. They thought they were not as evolved. Aboriginal destruction was reasoned to be a natural law. It's shown in this comment from settler in 1849. Nothing can say that the dying away of the Aboriginal race with providence has only allowed to hold land until replaced by a finer race. Upwards of 20,000 to 25,000 Aborigines were killed prior to 1930. Of the 250 languages present before 1788, not only about 20 or 30 are still spoken. In Tasmania, martial law was declared to solve the black problem, and every single native inhabitant was slaughtered. And the last woman died in 1876. They actually went. They got a bunch of Aborigines and they tied them up and they put them in zoos. And there was actually a really big trade where they'd actually kill them and they'd take their skulls. This right here is talking about the racism in Australia. It says the Aborigines under designation as Australian animals. They basically went there, they took their skulls, and they boiled them. This is right here. 45 heads were then boiled down, and the 10 best skulls were packed off for overseas. You can see over here it says 45 heads were then boiled down, and the best 10 skulls were packed off. And what they basically did was they took these skulls, they wanted to check them out and put them in museums. There's actually 33,000 human remains in the National Museum of Natural History in the Smithsonian in Washington. Down there in the basement, you can actually it's horrible. They have all these skulls down there. Sir Francis Gallen talked about eugenics. There was a huge eugenics movement in America until World War II broke out. And basically, eugenics basically says that if you're physically or mentally unstable, if you're old, have a handicap, or you're not that smart, they should be allowed to kill you, and by killing you, that's going to give more food and supplies and resources for the people that are fit. You know, they also believe that if you are older or handicapped, we don't want you having kids. We want only the strongest to have kids. So it's actually helping evolution. It says eugenics is the self-direction of human evolution. Like a tree, eugenics draws from materials so many sources and organizes them into a harmonious entity. So it's saying if you have the right kind of people, we want them breeding to make this big tree. But if you're handicapped or you have problems, you're not going to make a good tree. So we're just going to go ahead and kill you off. This is Franklin College in Indiana. They talked about the Carnegie Institution of Washington. They basically talked about this big eugenic movement, how they wanted to basically push eugenics. The unnatural selection American science has played a key role in the shameful history of eugenics. In time, these ideas gave rise to the American laws that empowered doctors to sterilize people they judged to be unfit and to pass their genes. So basically, if they felt you were unfit, they'd actually inject you with stuff that would basically make sure that you couldn't have babies. They made you sterile. And as a result, this person estimates that 60,000 people were sterilized in the United States over the course of the 20th century. Perhaps most chilling, though, was the ways in which American eugenics influenced their German counterparts. I've studied with great interest the laws of several American states concerning the prevention and reproduction of people in the prodigy world, and of all probability to be of no value or injurious to their racial stock. Adolf Hitler told a Nazi confidant. And basically what they did is they, in 1904, the World's Fair, they had 2,000 primitive people on display. The purpose of the display was to demonstrate the superiority of the white Americans who have evolved further. And just so you know, the World's Fair was here in America. It wanted you to show that, these people are not as evolved as we are, and they put them on display in a zoo. In 1904, the World's Fair was held in St. Louis, Missouri. A special display area was set up using pygmies in order to demonstrate the lack of evolutionary regression. And this guy right here was basically put in the zoo as basically an Aboriginal, basically a monkey man almost. The U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt was influenced by evolutionary theory. He believed there was inferior races like the Indians. This right here talks about how it's basically, this is a BJ 10th grade biology book, and it says, I wish very much that the wrong people could be prevented entirely from breeding. And if you go down further, it says, this statement was not made by Nazis in the 1930s, but in 1913 by American patriot Theodore Roosevelt. Although he was a great leader in other ways, he was of most Americans upper class by the early 1900s. And though as many immigrants from Europe, Scotland, Ireland, and the Orient were a threat to American society, he basically was a racist. But again, like I said, most people at this time are racists. In 1871, the Congress scrapped all treaties with the Indians and moved them into reservations, and that reservation system is still in place today. I'm sure you guys have heard of the Trail of Tears. Many tribes were forced from their lands due to racism. And there's actually a thing called the Trail of Tears. The Cherokees forced expulsion from their lands. Sam Houston lived with the Cherokees and even had a Cherokee wife. In 1838, the Cherokees were forced from their homes and their cities, and they renamed Ross Landing to Chattanooga. Malachi 2:10 says, have we all not one Father? Has not one God created us? Why do we deal treacherously, every man against his brother, by profaning the covenant of their fathers? So the Bible says that we're all one race. There's only one race, and that's the human race. There's no such thing as racism in the Bible. Acts 17:26 says, have made all one blood of all nations of men to dwell on the face of the earth. The Bible is saying very clearly there is no racism. We're all one race. Charles Darwin said, Charles Darwin thought women were inferior. He said a married man is a poor slave, worse than a Negro. The chief distinction in the intellectual powers of the two sexes is shown by the man's attaining a higher eminence to whatever he takes up than can a woman. Whether requiring deep thought, reasoning, or imagination, or merely the use of senses and hands, the average of mental power of that man must be above that of woman. Charles Darwin believed that men were more involved than women. Women aren't that smart. Thus, man has ultimately become the superior to woman. Poetry, strength, voice, etc. Darwin believed in inbreeding. He married his maternal father's granddaughter, who was also his mother's niece, to produce a superior stock. They had 10 children. Mary died shortly after birth. Anne died at age 10. Robert was born retarded and died at 19 months. Henrietta had a serious breakdown at age 15. 3 of his 6 other sons were ill so often that Charles regarded them as semi-invalids. So again, we have to attack this tree of evolution. We can't attack this little one branch at a time. What about communism? Evolution is the foundation of communism. Communism is based upon the evolutionary theory that removes God from authority and puts man in his place. The founder of the ACLU says communism is the goal. Moses Mordecai Marx Levi, who's called Karl Marx, at age 17 wrote a beautiful paper telling about his love for the Lord. And then he went off to college and studied philosophy, and he turned his back on God. 75% of all children raised in Christian homes who attend public school who reject their faith by their first year of college. Karl Marx said, my objective in life is to dethrone God and to destroy capitalism. Philip Wentworth said, when I entered Harvard at the fall of 1924, I was not only a Christian, I was also a veiled candidate for the ministry. Then for 4 years I underwent a process of mental readjustment, which shook my little world to its foundations. Though it all only one thing was clear to me: if I would reconcile religion with intelligence. I knew if I could not go with my chosen career, fortified by the experience, if I could not, every consideration of the honor would compel me to make other plans. In the end, I go with the ministry. Christianity has still fought, and it fought science to death, desperate and over evolution, because the evolution destroys utterly and fails the very reason Jesus' earthly life was supposedly made necessary: destroy Adam and Eve in the original sin. In the rebel, you'll find the story remains of the Son of God. Take away the meaning of his death. If Jesus was not the Redeemer who died for your sins, then this is what evolution means, then Christianity is nothing. So basically, this person's saying, if you get rid of God, there's no reason to have Jesus. And if there's no reason to have Jesus, there's no reason to have Christianity. So atheism is attacking Christianity directly. Karl Marx based his philosophy of communism on evolution. Karl Marx tried to dedicate his book to Charles Darwin. This says, to Charles Darwin from a sincere admirer, Karl Marx. Karl Marx had 6 children. 3 died of starvation in infancy, and 2 of them committed suicide. When Marx died in 1883, only 6 people attended his funeral. This is very important. This is a Karl Marx Communist Manifesto. These are the 10 points that they tell you to become a communist society. The first one is to abolish private property. You know, in America, we don't have private property. You have to pay the government to have your property. If you stop paying your income taxes, they send guys with guns to take you away and put you in jail. Leviticus 25:10 says, "Ye shall be hallowed the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man into his position, and it shall be returned to every man to his family." So in Leviticus it says, every 50 years, we have a year of jubilee, and anything your family ever owned goes back to you. See, they actually believed in private property. You know, if you had a loan you had to pay and you couldn't pay it, you could sell your property to make that money to pay out that loan. But every 50th year, the year of Jubilee, you get that property back. 1 Kings 4:25 says, "And Judah and Israel dwelt safely, for every man under his vine, under his fig tree, to Dan even to Beersheba to the days of Solomon." So 1 Kings is saying that there's possession, his vine, his fig tree. Proverbs 5:15, "Thy own cistern, thine own well." The Bible is really clear. You should have private property. But the president of the National Observance Society says, we reject the idea of private property. This right here is a little school said that they changed the Pledge of Allegiance to pledging to the earth. Another one here is a 3rd grade Superior public school. I pledge allegiance to the world. In October 2001, Joker Brander told me that when he was in 3rd grade at Johnson Elementary School, his teacher took down the American flag and made the kids pledge to the earth instead. So there's 2 basic philosophies of law and government. The first one is evolution, which says laws come from man's opinion. The rights are granted by the government, and the government should be all-powerful provider, which is democracy, and it always becomes totalitarian. You know, 70 to 80% of healthcare costs in America are from self-induced illnesses and accidents, like smoking, drinking, drunk driving, overeating, just being dumb. 70 to 80% of healthcare is self-inflicted. And if we're going to have universal healthcare, then why don't we have universal auto care? You know, if my car breaks down because I refuse to change the tires or change the oil, the government should be by law required to give me a health care or give me auto care. What about health care? If I don't take care of my house, is the government going to come in and take care of that? What about clothing? If I rip my pants, is the government going to come in and take care of that? It's absurd. The Declaration of Independence says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain rights." You know, the Declaration of Independence knew that we were created. There's a book right here called Hush Money. And it's a must-read for pastors and ministry leaders who want to understand the issue of church sovereignty and being a state church. You know, anybody that's 501c3, you are now a state church. And if you're a state church, the government could come in and shut you down at any time because you've given them permission. Because you become a 501c, you become a corporation of the government. This right here says, I cannot be emphasized too strongly that this great nation was founded by Christians, not only on religion, but the gospel of Christ. It is impossible to rightly govern without God in the Bible. That was George Washington. We abide by the principles taught in the Bible. Our country will go on prospering. That's Daniel Webster. Our Constitution was made only by a moral and religious people, It is wholly inadequate to govern any other way. That's John Adams. You also have the second idea of government. It's called creation. Laws come from the Creator. Rights are unalienable. And government should be limited by the punishment of all evildoers and defense. So basically, all the government's supposed to do is defend us and punish evildoers. That's the Constitution of a Republic. The second part of the Communist Manifesto: heavy progressive income tax. So the more you own, the more you got to get taxed. We're doing that in America also. What about abolish rights of inheritance? You know, in America, if somebody dies and they leave an inheritance, the government's allowed to tax that. Proverbs 13:22 says, "A good man leaveth an inheritance." What about the confiscation of property rights? Again, if you don't pay your income tax, they'll send guys with guns to take it away from you. The evolution is the foundation of philosophy to find the money power. What about the central bank? The Communist Manifesto says you have to have a central bank. There's a great book on that called The Creature from Jekyll Island, and it talks about the Federal Reserve. You know, we have a Federal Reserve here in America. It's a central bank. There's nothing federal about it. 1 Timothy 6:10 says, "For the love of money is the root of all evil." Money equals power. You know, ye shall be as gods. Remember the Yellow Brick Road? Think about this. The Wizard of Oz was not about some girl going to this place and having a good time. It was talking about the problem in America. You know, you have a Yellow Brick Road. You're going to OZ ounces. You know, you've got these different people, like the Scarecrow has no brain, the Tin Man has no heart, and then the English government's scared to say anything, which is the Lion. You know, the Wizard of Oz was based upon these dumb ideas that America had. You want to follow the money. You got these people that are strawmen that are just too dumb to know what's going on. You have our government that has no heart. They don't care about what happens to us. And England's seeing this whole thing, and they're too scared to do anything. That's the Wizard of Oz. Ezekiel 28:2 says, "Thus saith the Lord God, because thine heart is filled up, and they have said, I am God, I sit in the seat of God. Behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. With thy wisdom and thy understanding thou hast gotten thee riches. Within thy wisdom and thine understanding hast thou gotten thee riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of thine riches. The rich are ruled over the poor, and the poor is servant to the lender." You know, John Rockefeller, he was an oil tycoon, and Andrew Carnegie was a steel tycoon. The Carnegie Foundation started the National Center for Science Education, and its president, Eugene Scott, their sole purpose is to keep creation out of the public schools. Many super rich men think they have evolved smarter and deserve to rule the inferior mass of the world. I mean, you got to think about this whole thing going on in America right now. You have the government saying, hey, you know, if you just give all your money to us, we're going to solve all the problems. But if stuff happens, they're going to save themselves before they save you. It always works that way. For centuries, alchemists have tried to turn lead into gold. Lead is really, really cheap. It's everywhere, and it's just so cheap. And gold is like where all the money's at. The bankers actually discovered a way to do it. They start wars and they finance both sides. And after the lead stops flying, the gold rolls in as interest payments on the debt. During World War II, U.S. debt rose from $43 billion to $257 billion. That's a 598%. But the Japanese debt also went up. It rose 1,348%. And the French debt, it went up 5,083%. And the Canadian debt went up as well, 417%. You see, the big wealthy banks out there are funding all the sides, and once the interest rolls in, that money's due. That was from Bill Stills on Money Masters. Our national debt is staggering. Nehemiah 5:4-5 says, "We have borrowed money for the king's tribute, and that upon our lands and vineyards, and lo, we bring into bondage our sons and daughters to be servants." So they're saying, we borrowed all this money from the king to pay for all these houses, and now we can't pay it. So our sons and daughters now have to pay it. Some of the history of the love of money in America. In 1776, we fought a war and gained independence from England and the Bank of England. Only Congress has the power to coin money. And Jefferson warned, if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of currency, first by inflation and then by deflation, the banks and the corporations will grow up around them, and it will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless in the continents that their fathers conquered. So it's saying, don't let these banks come in here and take over, because they saw what the Bank of England did. And what do we got? We got this federal bank, and now all of our kids are in debt. In 1792, Alexander Hamilton established a 20-year charter with the Bank of England. In 1812, renewal was denied and war broke out. In 1833, Andrew Jackson removed all monies from charter banks and put them into state banks. In 1836, the richer man had Mexico invade Texas, and in 1861 he helped create the Civil War to disrupt the economy, create debt and give the power back. And then in 1861 through 1901, Industrial Revolution created great wealth in the hands of the few. In 1907, banker J.P. Morgan creates a financial panic of 1907 to promote the idea of a central bank. In 1912, Marxist Colonel House in Wilson administration wrote Philip D. the administrator to explain his conspiracy to establish a central bank and to create a progressive income tax to control both political parties. In 1931, December 23rd, the Federal Reserve Act was passed, and the 16th Amendment was passed creating the income tax. The Federal Reserve is not federal. It is not in the business pages of the blue government pages in the phone book. In 1916, Wilson, reflecting on the Federal Reserve Act, said, "I have unwittingly ruined my country." In 1920 and 20 through 29, the bankers increased their money supply by 62% to create the Roaring Twenties and introduce people to the stock market. In October of 1929, the bankers called to their loans and set the economy into the Great Depression. Then they helped create a New Deal, a program that they could loan the government money to rescue the economy. In June 10th of 32, Congresswoman Louise McFadden gave her powerful speech to Congress, spelling out who has caused the depression. In 1933, government debts to the bankers began to grow steadily. Millions readily accepted a Social Security number. The rich men even tricked these people into getting a Social Security number in order to get the benefits from their government. As usual, they created a crisis to encourage compliance. The old card said, "This is not for identification." But the new card says, it's identification. When you register for the draft, it says over here in block 3, if you have a Social Security number, it's mandatory that you include this information. But if you don't have one, leave the block blank. Basically saying you don't have to have a Social Security number. And this is a application. Social Security number is optional. Back in the 1900s, it says that the dollar was redeemable in gold by demand at the United States Treasury, or in gold or lawful money by any Federal Reserve Bank. In March of 1933, President Roosevelt declared to the Congress and the governors that a national state of emergency existed in the American and form of nature of the economy. The governors voted unanimously to recommend to the U.S. Congress the broad executive power to be granted to the President to wage war on the economic enemy. These powers would not be limited to these powers would not be available under normal constitutional progress. In March 9th of 1933, Congress voted to give the President of the United States and the Secretary of Treasury the emergency powers to sanction war through executive order. Section 5B of the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917 said it was amended to include the citizen of the United States by and through their ability to own gold and silver, and they become an enemy of the state. So this act pretty much said if you have gold and silver, you have to give it to the government, and if you don't, you're the enemy of the state. And then they started passing out bills that said this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and is redeemable by lawful money in the United States Treasury or any Federal Reserve Bank. So what is lawful money? Very interesting. And now it just says, is evident of debt of not money. See, this now says this note is legal tender for all debts in public purchase. What happened to the lawful money? What happened to the gold and silver? The Coinage Act of 1792, which has never been revoked, it defines a dollar as 25.8 grains of 9/10 silver gold and 412.5 grains of 9/10 fine silver. This person says, permit me to issue and control a nation's money, and I don't care who makes the laws. The surest way to destroy a nation is to debauch its currency. So he carried me away in the spirit to the wilderness, and I saw a woman upon a scarlet covered beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and silver colors, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornications. And you can see in the Euro how you have this person on a beast. And look over here, the Bank of England, it's got Charles Darwin on it. Many have been duped into thinking that they are obligated to go along with this protest. The real question is who's in charge, and who owes us, and who gives us the order. You know, we the sovereign people, for instance, your name, with a capital letter in the beginning, lowercase, that we basically, we're a person. We've created the government, an artificial, non-living, fictitious person. And the government owns, controls, regulates taxes, and assigns numbers to us, fines, destroys, whatever it wants to do, or whatever it creates. You see, the Declaration of Independence says the United States of America. You can see United and States in America. United is not capitalized. The S in States and the A in America is capitalized. But what happened is God created people. People created the government. And these states created a government called the United States of America. And then some government created the United States Corporation. The United States Corporation creates states like Florida, Tennessee. And it also creates people like our names in basically all capital letters. You see, what happens is God created people. Our name with a capital and lowercase letters. You have state governments, lowercase. United States of America, where it's basically, capital S, capital A, but the rest of it's lowercase. And then we have a mirror. United States in all caps. States in all caps. People in all caps. There's a fine line here. Everything above the line, we're still living in Kansas. Everything below the line, we're now living in Oz. So the government can create people like our names in all caps via birth certificates. They use them as straw men and trust corporations. They assume ownership over this artificial entity until you lay claim to it. We sign contracts to show that we are property of the government. We wish to be their slaves. Marriage licenses, social security cards, driver's licenses, things like that. In this court case in 2000, this guy decided to travel in his basically car under the common law of the Ontario basically the police ticketed him for driving without a license, driving an unsecured vehicle, and driving an unregistered vehicle. And this guy says, "Hi, folks. I went to court this morning, driven by a good friend. I really didn't know what to expect and had determined not to argue for my rights. But if I needed to simply state from Scripture why I should no longer accept and acknowledge any fictitious driver license in the name of a fictitious legal person, and be surely to the debts of their owners by Proverbs." They basically pose a bunch of Scripture. He says, to be honest with you, I went to court with very little faith and anticipated the judge would not listen to what I had to say and would probably levy the fines, and the minimum was going to be $5,000. So I expected I'd probably go to jail or simply didn't have the money to do that. When my name was called, I stood outside the gate. He didn't go inside the gate where the jurisdiction of the court, and stated to the judge that he was a natural person, and that it was an understanding that all 3 defendants in the cases before him was legal persons, all caps, and which I had nothing to do with. At that point, the judge motioned with his finger for me to step forward so he could hear him better. He wanted him to come to his jurisdiction. I safely ignored him and reiterated that I was a natural person to whom the offensive notices had been delivered to, and I was not the legal person as named in the defendants. And that being the case, I asked the judge if there was any further need of my presence in the courtroom. He said, "Wait a minute, let me consider what has been said." And he was silent for some time, and he figured through the papers before him. And then he spoke about this legal person that I referred to. Here are the 3 charges, and asked me if I was not the one who allegedly had committed these offenses. Again, I replied, I was a natural person, and that the Dictionary of Canada laws clearly distinguishes the natural person and legal persons. At that point, he said, "You are sure you are not the person named in these charges. You're free to leave. But I have 2 options before me. If you are the person named on your driver's license will be suspended." To which I responded, "I have no driver's license." Or number 2, I can order the police officer who laid these charges to arrest the person against whom these charges were laid. If you're not that person, you have nothing to fear. You're free to go. And the guy left. So you have the United States of America, the federal entity defined by Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And you have the United States in lowercase, which is one of the 50 states. Then you have the United States citizen, which is the District of Columbia citizens. United States of America, a plaintiff pleading the case having the venue and jurisdiction oriented to the Philippines. If it's all capital like that, it means you live in the Philippines. If it's all capital for the United States, it says you live in the District of Columbia. There's a great book called The Horn of the Beast. It's basically a great video talking about the Federal Reserve and the New World Order. There's also a great series of books on the Rockefeller family and their ties with destruction of capitalism and the triumph of the world of communism. This is Kondratiev, him meeting his real master and provider, Governor Nelson Rockefeller. He actually often boasted that he received secret codes, monies, and all secrets by the Rockefellers. We've traded real money, gold and silver, for worthless paper. So those who control the real money will require all the transactions to be controlled electronically by an embedded chip. Revelation 13:16 says, "And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark on their right hand or their forehead, and that no man may buy or sell, save he that has the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number on his name." Revelation 14 says, "If any man worship the beast, and receive his image, and receive the mark on his hand, forehead or hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, and he shall be tormented with brimstone, fire and brimstone." So this is a bunch of articles coming out. This was 2001, and it says the money they're basically dishing cash for smart cards. Money is no longer accepted. You have to have the smart card. There's a great book by Terry Cook called The Mark of the World Order, and you can actually get it online. I'm sure you guys have seen the Speed Pass. You just take this little thing on your keychain, you go up to the thing, and you just scan it, and it automatically charges your card. There's no money involved. It's just a little wand here with a little chip inside of it. And then CNN saying, "Is the human implant going to be the future?" This is actually the Mu chip. It's actually the smallest microchip we've ever seen. You can see it. It's really, really small on this guy's fingertip. This right here is talking about microchips going under your skin. It says some people consider radio frequency identification to be cutting-edge technology, but a bleeding edge. Mexican Attorney General, whatever his name is, announced recently that he has several members of his staff and some 160 employees of a new $30 million anti-crime computer center in Mexico City have all been implemented with RDI of chips. You know, Mondex, a compound of the word monetary and dexter, Webster's Dictionary of Encyclopedia defines these words as monetary, pertaining to money, dexter, belonging to the location on the right hand. So Mondex is talking about money that has to do with your right hand. And MasterCard owns 51% ownership of Mondex. This is the final stage of becoming a global reality, says Robin Kelly of Mondex International. With MasterCard's backing, there's nothing to stop Mondex now from becoming the global standard. Watch for smart cards using SET protocols that will be displayed in the set marks. The Set is actually an Egyptian god of good, of evil. AT&T and Lucent Technologies purchased their franchise from Ondex. Their logo is a symbol of a red serpent, or the red dragon, who's actually Satan. Lunix is a compounder from Lucifer Enterprises. They seem to be quite fragrant in naming their products. Styx, River and Hades, Janus is a two-faced god, Inferno promoted the quick quote from the Inferno, a story about Lucifer and the bowels of hell. This company deliberately chose to move their new offices to 666 Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. What about this little smart trip? They got all these different cards you can use. Basically for fare cards or passes. They don't want to have money anymore. They want you to have these cards. This person says, get chipped, and you can charge without the plastic because you are the card. Chip is implanted in Mexico judicial workers. Security has reached a subtaneous level for Mexico's Attorney General, and at least 160 people in his office. They have been implemented with microchips to give them access to secure areas of the headquarters. So basically, these guys take these little microchips, about the size of a grain of rice. They put them in their hand, and they can just walk by these doors and wave their hand, and the door opens up for them. The people who control the world's wealth, they think they have everything under control. But Revelation 6:15 through 17 says, and the king of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondsman, and every free man, hide themselves in their dens in the rocks and the mountains, and say to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us for the face of them that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, who will be able to stand? So Revelations is saying that all these rich men, all these people that think they're in control, are going to want to hide from God once he takes over. Number 6 in the Communist Manifesto. The government ownership of communication, like the FCC, and transportation, the TSA. We get that going on in America also. What about government ownership of factories and agriculture? The government will come into your agriculture, and they'll basically send drones over there to count how much sheep you have, how much corn you have, how much cows you have. They basically want to control what's going on. What about government controlling the labor? How many government agencies are there anymore controlling labor? Like Job and Family Service, they want you to go to them to get money. What about corporate farms and regional planning? What about free education? All children in public school. They basically started the public school system, which is a communist idea. Again, Adolf Hitler says, let me control the textbooks and I'll control the state. I'm much afraid that the schools will provide to be great gates to hell, unless they diligently labor in explaining the scriptures, engraving them in the hearts of the youth. I advise no one to place his child where the scriptures do not reign paramount. Every institution in which men are not increasingly occupied with the Word of God must become corrupt. That was from Martin Luther. The New England primer used American public, private, semi-private homes and schools until the 1900s. This is the first grade textbook. And let me see if you can tell why some 12 to 14 years of college is such a surely early age. Remember, this is the first grade textbook. They teach you letters. A, by Adam's fall we find all. B, to heaven's mind a Bible mind. C, Christ crucified for sinners died. It's basically teaching the alphabet with scripture. What about this right here? A wife maketh a glad father, but a foolishness is half his mother. B, better a little fear of the Lord than a great treasure. They teach the Bible verses using the alphabet. But our books say you're an animal and share a common ancestor, common heritage with earthworms. Creation science isn't even mentioned in these things. Students are not given a possibility of knowing a reasonable model even exists. What about the UN-sponsored World Declaration on Education for All in the 1990s? They called for the nations of the world to adopt a common educational system, complete with implementing timetables and recommending curriculum. In our own nation, Goals 2000 School to Work and Elementary and Secondary Education Act are totally consistent with the One World Government recommendations of the 1990 UN Declaration. John Dunfrey, the humanist, says, the battle for mankind's future must be waged and won in the public school classroom by teachers who correctly perceive their roles as proselytizers of a new faith that will replace the rising corpse of Christianity. Every child who enters school at the age of 5 is mentally ill. because he comes to school with alliance towards the elective officials, founding fathers, institutions, government, patriotism, nationalism, and sovereignty. All these prove the children are sick, because the well individual is the one who has rejected those teachings, and the one who called the true international child the communist of the future. That's Dr. Pierce from Harvard University in 1973. Any child who believes in God is mentally ill. That's what the socialist scientist HBJ says. Education is the most powerful ally in humanism, and every American public school is a school of humanists. What can the theist Sunday school meeting for an hour once a week and teaching only a fraction of the children do to stem the tide of a 5-day program of humanist teachings? What this guy's saying is, you go to church 1 hour a day, maybe 3 to 5 hours a week, but you go to school for 7 hours a day for 5 days a week. This doesn't matter what the church is saying, we're going to win. James Patterson, the Journal of Natural Science for Science Education, says, as a matter of fact, creationism should be discriminated against. No advocate of such propaganda should be trusted to teach science classes or administer science programs anywhere under any circumstances. Moreover, if they are not doing so, they should be dismissed. An Iowa professor said, professors should be able to fail any student, no matter what the grade record indicates, if the professor discovers a student is a creationist. Furthermore, the students' department should always have the right to refract grades and possibly even degrees if a student becomes a creationist later. This guy right here was given a diploma, or a degree, diploma. He was basically denied his high school diploma because he didn't believe in evolution on a senior. And make sure you read The Fourth Reich by D. Griffin to see how John Rockefeller used his money to further the communist influence in education. I love my country, but I fear my government. Communism is anti-Christian in every way. This is a communist rules for revolution. So let's corrupt the young and get them away from religion. Break down the old moral values. Encourage civil discourse, disorders, and soft government attitudes towards crime. Divide the people into hostile groups, race, religion, things like that. Get the people's minds off their government by focusing their attention on athletics and sex. Do you know there was only in 1896 about 310 athletes, and in 1996 there was over 13,000 athletes? What about this advertising for a 50-inch TV? Football is a religion. Build a nice church. What about get control of all media like CNN, the Communist News Network? David Rockefeller, he voiced his praise on the controlled U.S. media for keeping their oath not to divulge his governmentalist plans to the public. Speaking to his fellow conspirators in a meeting in 1991 in Germany of yet one more influenced world order group, the Bilderbergers, Mr. Rockefeller said, "We are grateful to the Washington Post and New York Times, Times Magazine, and other great publishers whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promise of discretion for almost 40 years. He went on to explain, it would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of the public publicity during these years. But the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The sovereignty of an intelligent elite as world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodeterminational practices in past centuries. We're going to impose our agenda on the coverage by dealing with the issues and subjects we choose to deal with." That's what the CBS said. Our job is to give people not what they want, but what we decide they have. That's the president of CBS. The New York Times is deliberately pitched to liberals, deliberately pitched to a liberal point of view. That's the New York Times. News reporters are certainly liberal and left to center. It's Walter Cronkite. The news media is generally our liberals. That's what Barbara Walters said. Also, destroy people's faith in their leaders. Those who cast the votes decide nothing. Those who count the votes decide everything. That is attributed to communist Joseph Stalin. Also, cause the registration of all firearms to eventually confiscate. So they're saying you have to register every firearm so we can later confiscate these firearms from you. We know which house to go to get their firearms. And this guy said one person with a gun can control 100 people without one. Every dictator tries to enforce some type of gun control to his people. Gun control to a dictator equals power and control. Ye shall be as gods. I saw this button right here. Don Boy said gun control is not about guns but about control. But I saw this button that says proudly unarmed. Who's gonna wear this? What does this say to a criminal? Rob me. Don Boy says, you might be a liberal if you don't trust honest Americans with automatic weapons, but you do trust the federal government with them. He says, you might be a liberal if you think guns are the cause of crime, but you don't think matches are the cause of arson. You might be a liberal if you think the death penalty is government-sanctioned killing, but you don't think a prison sentence to a government-sanctioned is kidnapping. Do you know there's about 700,000 U.S. physicians in the world, in the United States? And the accidental death caused by a physician is about 120,000 every year. That means the deaths to physician ratio is about 17%. You know there's about 80 billion gun owners in the United States, and the accidental gun deaths every year is about 1,500. That means deaths to the gun owner is only about 0.019%. A person is 9,000 times more likely to be killed by your doctor than a gun accident. You know, Adolf Hitler said, this year will go down in history for the first time a civilized nation had full gun registration. Our streets will be safer, our police more efficient, and the world will follow our leaders to the future. You know, gun registration is not enough. That's what Attorney General Janet Reno says. Waiting periods are only a step. Registration is only a step. The prohibition of private firearms is the goal. That's what she said. She wants to get rid of all firearms. What good does it to ban some guns? All guns should be banned. That was a former Ohio senator. Our task of creating a total socialist America can only be succeeded when those who resist have been totally disarmed. That was Sandra Brady. And we should, then every community in the country should do their part by major weapon sweepers and destroying the weapons, not selling them. That was Bill Clinton of the United States of America. The first 12 months after gun ownership in Australia were forced to surrender 640,381 personal firearms to be destroyed, and this cost the government more than $500 million. Homicides nationwide went up 3.2%. Assaults went up 8.6%. Armed robberies went up 44%. In the state of Victoria, homicides with firearms are up 300%. Figures over the previous 25 years show a steady decrease in armed robbery with firearms. There has also been a dramatic increase in break-ins and assaults to the elderly. In 1911, Turkey established gun control. From 1915 to 1917, 1.5 million Armenians were unable to defend themselves, and they were rounded up and exterminated. In 1929, the Soviet Union established gun control. From 1929 to 1953, about 20 million dissents, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. Jews were prohibited from carrying firearms and ammunition. That was a Nazi gun control decree in 1938. Germany established gun control in 1938, and from 1939 to 1945, 13 million Jews and others who were unable to defend themselves were rounded up and exterminated. China established gun control in 1935. From 1948 to 1952, 20 million political dissidents unable to defend themselves were rounded up and exterminated. Guatemala established gun control in 1964. From 1964 to 1981, 100,000 Mayan Indians unable to defend themselves were rounded up and exterminated. Uganda established gun control in 1970. From 1971 to 1979, 300,000 Christians unable to defend themselves were rounded up and exterminated. Cambodia established gun control in 1956. From 1975 to 1977, 1 million educated people unable to defend themselves were rounded up and exterminated. Defenseless people rounded up and exterminated in the 20th century because of gun control, 56 million. The next time someone talks in favor of gun control, ask them, who do you want to round up and exterminate? With guns, we are citizens. Without them, we are subjects. In 1982, the town of Kennesaw, Georgia, passed a law requiring all able adults, except convicts or COs, to have guns. They have only had one murder from an out-of-state criminal with a gun. and have had no increase in crime or violence in 12 years. Their plan is simple: create a crisis, blow up the Reichstag or Muir-Building, and get your people to accept your solution: more anti-terrorist laws and more gun control. Communist definition of peace is the absence of resistance. Communism is based on evolution. Man can be as gods. It says here, historical evolution is on your side, he shouted to his followers. Capitalism brought to you by being the laws of historic evolution. At a very early age, while still a pupil at the ecclesiastical school, Communist Stalin developed a critical mind and revolutionary sentiments. He began to read Darwin and became an atheist. Remember Charles Darwin's book, The Origin of Species. This is the book that changed the philosophy of Joseph Stalin. Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin was reported to have killed 60 to 100 million of his own people. As you can see, the Russians and the USSR, they decided to attack Poland. Joseph Stalin ordered the execution of 14,700 Polish officers during World War II. Pol Pot, communist dictator of Cambodia, executed over 1 million of his own people. From 1975 to 1979, the Khmer Rouge, under the leadership of Pol Pot, executed more than a third of the entire Cambodian population. When the communists took over China in 1949, they began executing Christians at the rate of 15,000 each month. Mao Zedong murdered about 60 million people. Mao listed Darwin and Huxley as his two favorite authors. When man thinks there's no God, Satan deceives him into believing that he is God. The communists have rejected God's authority and developed a plan to bring all people under communism. So let's summarize. God made the world. He owns it. And he can make the rules like the Ten Commandments. We are guilty of breaking his rules. We will be punished. Or we must find a substitute to take our place. Jesus is willing and able. If you were to die today, where would you go? You're going to be dead for a long time. All you have is that little dash between the dates. You should use it for God. This guy here is an atheist. He put on the bottom, I'm a busy man. I don't have time for this. As you can see, he was an atheist. Some claim to be atheists. But Psalms 14:1 says, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. You can get this book here by Ray Comfort. It says God doesn't believe in atheists. So what on earth are you doing, for heaven's sake? So guys, I appreciate you guys following my YouTube seminar. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and click the bell. By subscribing and clicking the bell, it'll let you know whenever I post a new video. Also, like and comment. By liking and commenting, it lets YouTube know that I'm getting views, and it's going to promote my channel more. And if you don't really have anything to comment, just say good job, thank you, or you can ask any kind of question you want. Well, I appreciate you guys listening, and have yourself a great day.